Hi, and welcome to another of our Boundless motoring Q&A sessions. Thanks for joining me again. Remember, I'm here to help, so if there's anything you'd like to know from the big wide world of motoring, please get in touch. I'll give you all the ways to contact me at the end. Shaun asks, what does the future for us petrolheads look like to you? Will those of us who drive classic cars still be able to? This is the million-dollar question right now, and I really wish I had a crystal ball. Of course, we know that the sale of brand new pure petrol and pure diesel cars will be banned completely by 2035, in the UK at least. However, that's only a ban on the sale of new cars. It's not a ban on the buying, selling or owning of older petrol and diesel cars. Having said that, we're already seeing some local authorities taking it upon themselves to create clean air zones by imposing restrictions or even outright bans on older, more polluting cars, especially diesels. London's ultra-low emission zone, for example, charges non-compliant vehicles, that is, most diesels registered before 2016 and most petrol and diesel cars registered before 2006, charges them an extra £12.50 on top of the £11.50 congestion charge fee. However, these clean air zones tend to apply to city centres and fairly small areas, so I think a drive in the countryside in your old car is still going to be a possibility for a long time yet. Of course, almost all car makers are already moving towards electrification, and as more and more people buy electrified cars, there'll be a natural attrition of older models anyway. And the government might find other ways to discourage people from driving older cars, such as increased road tax for more polluting models. However, I think exceptions could and should be made for valuable classic vehicles. They form such a small percentage of traffic, and if used occasionally for recreation, they actually cause very little environmental harm. Personally, I see no reason why you couldn't have an old sports car in the garage for weekends and a brand new electric car for everyday driving. Our next question comes from Michael, who asks, will we be able to fit electric motors to our classic cars? Absolutely. Lots of companies out there convert classic cars to electric power, and almost anything can be electrified, from Fiat 500s and VW campers to Minis and Porsche 911s. EV motors, batteries and other components are readily available, either brand new from suppliers such as zeroev.co.uk or sourced from Teslas and other EVs second-hand after they've been written off, for example. However, it's not a cheap operation. For example, London Electric Cars, an EV conversion specialist, recommends budgeting at least £25,000 for a full conversion. You might find companies who can do it for less, but remember, this is your pride and joy we're talking about, so you'll want it to be in good hands. Of course, if you're mechanically minded, then a cheaper option is to consider a DIY conversion, but that's not something to take lightly. Electric conversions require specialist knowledge, not least because of the high voltage health and safety risks. Our third question is from Alan, who asks, I've recently bought a 2-year-old PHEV with 12,000 miles on the clock. It's showing a maximum electric range of 19 miles when it's fully charged, but I've read that it should be 29 miles. Is that a misprint? Well, most plug-in hybrids have a pure electric driving range, that is, how far you can go on the battery power alone without assistance from the engine, of about 30 miles. However, that's a best-case scenario. Of course, the electric range of a plug-in hybrid, or indeed a fully electric car, depends on how you drive it. It's just like a petrol or a diesel. High revs, brisk acceleration, driving uphill, they all reduce your MPG or driving range. Most modern plug-in hybrids have a quoted electric range of about 30 miles, but in reality you have to drive really very carefully to actually achieve that. So in the real world, for your PHEV, an electric-only range of about 20 to 25 miles is probably the best you can hope for. As your car's only 2 years old with just 12,000 miles on the clock, the battery should still be as good as new, so I don't think that's the problem. My advice would be to try putting it into eco mode, which does things like softening the throttle response, and then drive as carefully as possible. Also, turn down your air conditioning and heated seats. These all use power and in effect take away from your driving range. Our next question is from David, who says, I have a 2009 Mini Clubman, petrol, approaching 100,000 miles. It's been serviced regularly and had regular oil changes, but is there anything I should change in the engine to help extend the life of the car? Well, if your car's been properly serviced, then it should have had most of the big jobs done, including the all-important timing chain. Of course, there are plenty of things you can do between services to help keep your car shipshape. Check the oil every 2 weeks and top up if necessary. Check your air filter for dust and other deposits. A Haynes manual will tell you where it is, and it's usually just a case of popping off a plastic cover, and a filter can usually be cleaned simply with soap and water. Run your air conditioning and have it recharged every year or two. Quick Fit will do this for about £60. Keep your tyres correctly inflated, drive smoothly, wash your car, cover it if you can. Don't carry around any unnecessary weight in the boot. Keep an eye on the battery terminals for corrosion and replace your battery if it's getting old. Another thing you could consider is a rust proofing or anti-corrosion treatment for the underbody. Hammerite wax oil is still a really good way to keep rust at bay. Personally, I had my old Land Rover treated with Dinitrol, which was applied by a specialist. You can do it yourself, but it's a messy job, so make sure you have an appropriate space and proper equipment. Our final question is from Kevin, who asks, I have a 2-litre diesel Ford Focus. I usually do a mixture of long and short runs, but at the moment I'm only doing about 3 or 4 miles at a time. Is this going to damage or block the diesel particulate filter? The chances are it probably will. If left to build up, a blocked DPF can cause your car to lose performance or go into a limp home mode. I actually had this exact problem after buying a 2-litre Ford Focus diesel just like yours. The first thing to do is to look out for a warning light on the dashboard and catch the problem before it gets too bad. The RAC advises a good 30 to 40 mile motorway run to burn off any soot. In other words, the DPF will automatically regenerate itself. However, if your DPF is already clogged up, most garages can clear it in a process called forced regeneration. This usually costs around £100, and while it's not a 100% guaranteed fix, it's usually successful in removing the excess soot, which will then allow your DPF to automatically regenerate again. That's it for today's questions. Thank you very much to everyone who got in touch. If there's a question you'd like to ask, you can reach me via the Boundless Twitter and Facebook pages, or via the email address you see on your screen now. See you next week for another episode. Thanks very much for joining me.